So I'm out here today in San Francisco. I'm out here today in Santa Rosa, California, and as you can see, it's a bit cold this morning. So wearing all this, hat and stuff because I think we're a little bit below freezing right now. Hopefully, it'll warm up. But I'm out here to talk about, a very personal topic. This is not something I'm really comfortable making a public video about, but I've struggled with this and thinking about it for some time. The reason why I'm making this video now at this particular time is because there's somebody that's still stuck in a similar situation, and I visited them and I saw what they're going through. So this video has to come out at this time, unfortunately. So it's in the awareness, and maybe this person can benefit from it as well. But as much as it is for this one particular individual, this person, it's also really for anyone who's in a similar situation. And this is the person, the situation that we'll be talking about. It's relatively small, but I'm sure there are other people out there in similar situations, and maybe those groups are bigger, and there may be more people that could benefit in other organizations that I haven't even been involved with, but have dynamics that could be similar. Because I've heard of situations where similar situations can occur. And what we're going to be talking about is to understand the fundamentals, and the really how it works, where somebody is able to leverage extraordinary abilities, supernatural abilities, and where it goes beyond just having those abilities and using them purely for people's benefits, where it kind of goes beyond that and crosses a line, in my opinion, crosses a line, and goes into making claims about themselves, about who they are, leveraging those abilities to say things about who they are that isn't true, and in doing so to manipulate people's thoughts and feelings, make them feel certain ways about the situation, about that individual, and wind up like giving up their lives, their money, and everything to that individual. When I was in this, my parents said, is this a cult? What is this? I didn't know. I mean, at the time, because of how I felt and how I thought, I was in it and I saw it a different way. What I want to get at and make the point that this is actually a very nuanced situation. It's really not so cut and dry. And in this video, I don't want to come at it from a place of blaming anyone or getting angry at anyone. Yes, I have been angry, but I've tried to let go of that anger, because anger doesn't help anybody. And what I want to do is purely look at the facts, because without the facts, we can't actually go anywhere. And I'd even heard there have been people who interacted with the same individual that I had, who went out and told a bunch of other people, negative things, and what happened was nothing. This individual was still able to operate because we didn't actually get down to the facts of what was going on and who they were. And without the facts, it's just like, they can say one thing and another person can say something else. It's like just their opinion about what they feel, how they felt. Maybe they just got pissed off, they got angry, and they said a bunch of stuff, and you can't really take that too seriously. What I've tried to do and what I want to share with you guys today is that I didn't just like get pissed off and run away. I spent months trying to get some facts. And when I was going about the facts, I didn't just rely on myself. I didn't just rely on even one other person. I consulted a team of psychics, a team of channelers who are able to go beyond even their own psychic ability and have other divine beings such as angels come in and provide information. And I've compiled that information into a report, and we can share that as well during this video, so everybody can see what these other people have said. And these are people that had no connection to the situation. None of those people had met this person before. They hadn't been even in the same areas or continents, mostly, where this person had been. So that's pretty much as objective as I can get, and I tried to get multiple opinions from from multiple people in different angles. So that's something we'll definitely be looking at. The other thing that I will say is that now I'm in this line of work, right? So now I'm providing spiritual support to others, and I can empathize and see where this individual was coming from, who you could aggrandized, over exaggerated, and manipulated people. I understand where that was coming from, because as I go out and try to help people now, and I'm very open about who I am and who I'm not, and what I can do and what I can't. What I do see, is people will come to me, and we may have an extraordinary experience in meditation, an experience that may sound comparable to what this other individual provides in many respects, and people will say afterwards what they experienced. They may be in certain bliss states, they may see certain things, have real incredible experiences, but in large part because I'm very open about who I am and what I'm not, they don't feel compelled to be like into me or my organization every day, and necessarily like keep coming back. So what I see is people may have had these incredible experiences, but they feel free to come and go, and they feel free to move on. And I don't necessarily have the following that I would have, or the stickiness of people keeping on investing that much time and going to so many additional sessions, because I'm open, because it's very open, and therefore they don't feel like drawn into it, like that's something that they have to do. So this is it's not an easy industry, if you want to kind of compare it like that. So I can see, and I can even empathize with this individual who made people feel that he was more than he was, because economically, I can see from my own experience now how that makes sense from an economic perspective. You get a recurring revenue of somebody who keeps coming back again and again without without the additional marketing effort. It's very hard to market here and and draw people in. So if you have somebody, and you can get them to pay $300 a day for months or years, that's a very attractive business. So I can see how maybe this individual actually thought it was necessary, because there are certain situations in his life, family issues, where he may feel he needed that money, and he may have felt compelled, or even though he was in sort of a box, his own box, where he had to go out and and tell people that he's God. So let's dig into this. Let's dig into this a little bit more. Let's really get into it. I'm not going to keep this a super short, video. I'm going to try to walk through what I know, and hopefully you'll come away with more of an understanding. I just think that knowledge and understanding is necessary to level the playing field, if you will, because I don't think it's a truly free will choice to get sucked into something if there's an asymmetry of information. And I think it's our duty to protect those of us who may be involved in such a situation, such a cult like situation, or a cult situation. Now, we can't force those individuals to do anything, and I wouldn't want to force an individual to do anything if they're really happy in that cult, and losing all their money and all their time and all of their thinking power, and they've left their life behind, and they're happy with that, then that's great. Um, you know, we can't drag them out of that cult if they're happy in the cult. We want them to be there. And that's the best thing for them. And their spirit and their soul has decided that this is an important part of their journey, that they should be stuck in a cult where it could be less spiritually effective than if they were not in a cult and had their own choice to go about their own spiritual progress and use that money, perhaps to a lot more benefit by exploring different teachers, because they weren't stuck in one particular cult. But if they've decided and their spirits decide that this is really the right time for them, it's that point in their journey where they need to be stuck in a cult, then we don't want to pull them out of it. We want to leave them in that cult forever, and they can spend the rest of their lives there. But I think it is our responsibility to provide some information. So you can show them this video, or you can talk to them and just explain in your own words, some of the things I'm going to explain, and if that information changes their opinion about the situation, the decision they want to make, well, then that's also their decision. It's only fair to provide somebody with the information. And right now, if they're in a cult, there could be an information asymmetry where they deliberately haven't been told all the facts, because that's the point, and that's how a cult works. It changes your thinking based on an alternative set of facts, and basically an alternative version of reality, even an alternative religion, if you want to call it like that. But that is not true in the broader sense. Let's get into this. Let's get some of the claims that this individual has made, that he's told me directly. So he said, as I said, he said he is God. He said, and things in distant planets, things are happening, but it's all like a small part of his being. He said stuff. It's like out of the Bhagavad Gita or something. Like it's like hair growing on his head. He doesn't feel it, but it's part of his massive being. He gives Shaktipat meditations, but basically claims that it's himself that's giving the entire meditation. That's not true. That's not how it works, and we're going to talk about that later and explain why it doesn't work that way. He's essentially said in all manner of times that that he is everything, and he's used extensive miraculous powers to back up his claims that are not true. And we'll talk about why I say that's not true, and what other people have said that confirms that. The important thing to understand here is that there is actually a very strong basis for what he is saying, and a lot of what he can do is real. And that's what makes lies so effective, is when they're actually a mix of truth and lie. So your mind is kind of clinging on to what has actually happened and what is real, and then what isn't real is kind of layered on top of that, and then you're not able to tell the difference between what is real and what is not real. So what is real? So I've seen incredible miracles. I've seen him stop a storm midway. I've seen him start a storm midway. So I have rain just flying through out of nowhere, right in the middle of India where it's very, very dry. All of a sudden he's got a rainstorm coming in where he snaps his fingers. He can read people's minds. So he's told me, like, when I'm getting hungry. There's one time I was like looking at astral travel, and I don't think he liked that, because in astral travel you can get more information. So he knew I had astral traveled. I went down in the morning, had a picture on his computer, a video about astral traveling. He told somebody else, and I heard this firsthand from this person, other devotee, that he had told this devotee's sister that 14 years ago she had first thought of getting a divorce. Now the interesting thing is, with all these examples are used to provide credibility and establish in those devotees' minds the belief that this person is God, and therefore they have to worship this person and give everything to them, give all their money to this person. And he told me, like, your money is God's money. You're working for God. I'm God, right? So therefore, that's all my money. He took everything I had. Okay, so over $200,000. Took away the relationship with my wife. Actually, asked us, ordered, if you will, me stopping to talk to her, and actually getting divorced, separating. And yeah, that really really hurt in some very deep ways that I'm still not through after all this time. So there's a lot at stake here. It's a very important issue. I don't want other people to be in a similar situation unless that's what they really want to do and they know all the facts. Um, so how this worked for somebody else in that example I just mentioned. So he told this person, told his sister 14 years ago, that's when she first had the thought of divorcing her husband. And that was true. So therefore, this devotee concluded, or was kind of coerced to conclude, that this must be God. Who else but God would know that 14 years ago, my sister had the thought of getting divorced for the first time? Who else would know that? So that established in his mind, still established to this day. It's like an anchoring thought, creating this belief that this guru is God. The key is to really understand here, though, that we need to know how these abilities work and demystify them, explain how they work, how it operates, because it turns out that you don't need to be God in order to know what's happening in somebody else's mind, even to know what's happened in the past. It's not necessary. There are ways of knowing that information without being God. And the first thing I want to do in this video is to start explaining how this works. And at this point, I can provide that information with some credibility, because to a limited extent, I have or have experienced some of these abilities. I provide distance meditation where people are feeling stuff on the other end, even though they're in the other side of the world. I provide that now, and I'm able to say how it works. Some of this is in my experience, and some of this I've extensively spoken with people who have these kind of abilities. So, in order to say that somebody's sister in their mind 14 years ago, that's when they first thought of divorce, it turns out there's more than one way to get that information. One is if if you're able to channel, if you're able to clear your mind and move into different frequencies, you could even directly ask the Akashic Records what happened 14 years ago and directly get that information. And this individual, this guru, has those kind of abilities. He has real abilities, real power. He did spend a lot of time in meditation working with his guru, and he clearly developed some abilities, but that doesn't mean he's God. So you can ask the Akashic Records. You can also channel, and get that information from any other source that's not the Akashic Records. So you could get that information from another spiritual being. And in this case, when we dug into this with other channelers, we found that this guru is actually working with the spirit of his guru. The spirit of his guru is doing or can do a lot of this legwork. So he could just be in communication with that spirit and be getting a bunch of information that we might all think is miraculous and godlike. How did he know that? and he's got this other spirit in his ear. And because he can channel, he's able to listen to that, and then he can get a whole bunch of information, and then unfortunately use that to make people believe he's God and take their money or take their time or otherwise manipulate them. So, yeah, let's continue to go a bit further. We need to talk about manifestation. So I think some of the most impressive things he's done is doing things like alter the weather. Um, there are abilities like manifestation. If you're really focused and in a really firm, solid state of mind with an intention, it's possible to manifest things. Often we see these in our life. If we're particularly focused on something, certain outcomes might align or happen, and sometimes in miraculous ways we can see extraordinary coincidences come together. If you're really focused and really refined in your mind, then you could be able to achieve supernatural events like that. What we have to do is distinguish kind of truth from untruth, and see where that line is. So what is true is that this individual spent years doing intense sadhana in India, even to the point where he was able to withstand um, withstand being in a fire, and be able to ignore that pain. That was part of his initiation, a fire circle surrounding them, bursting hot stones into his body, being able to stay in a meditative position. So he achieved the ability to have that focus, achieved the ability to manifest even extraordinary things. Another thing he did was stop a fire midway. It was kind of consuming a devotee's warehouse. He stopped a fire midway. Um, so he's able to do some really extraordinary things. He developed these powers, but that does not mean that he's God. When we further looked into this, and we had multiple channelers look into this, we found some very interesting things. And I also wanted to understand, because I've been so invested in the spiritual growth, like what spiritual growth had actually occurred for me. And a couple of the channelers said that there actually had been growth. So what he did had actually been effective, right? So we have to give credit where credit is due. In this video, there's no sense in blaming someone for things, and not recognizing the full picture. And that's the point of this, that to understand that it's not just black or white. We have to recognize the full picture and understand what's really going on. So he is able to help people spiritually. And I had another entity, right, channeled through somebody else. I had their being go into the Akashic Records and do a comparison of where I was at different times in my spiritual journey, working with this person before and after. And they said that there was extraordinary improvement. So he is able to have a spiritual effect, and these people and beings that had nothing to do with the situation were able to measure that. Now, whether it makes sense to be doing that for 5 hours a day and for $300 a day, and emptying out your entire bank account and going into debt, that's another story. But he does have these incredible abilities. We also went into the Akashic Records. I consider the Akashic Records a fairly neutral source. They generally don't have really an agenda. They more give probabilities of kind of what might happen. They can tell you what happened in the past. And they did say that he's not God. Okay. So it's one other point of reference, right there. Um, we learned that he was able to build an extraordinary amount of power around himself, around his physical body, around his structure. Um, he is able to he has accumulated extreme power around himself, and that makes sense. He's able to influence all kinds of people around him. He's able even to influence what people might say who are around him. I've heard cases like that. Going into a hospital, he wanted a certain outcome from the doctor. The doctor wound up saying, exactly what he thought. So he's able to influence even what people might think. Um, we learn that he has aligned himself with frequencies of power also. So he's able to do certain things. We learn that he has been able to activate and clear his upper chakras, such as the crown chakra, the third eye, potentially the throat chakra. He's very developed in those upper chakras, and that allows him to have these incredible abilities. But what we also unfortunately learned is that he did not completely clear out his own lower chakras. They're not completely cleared out. Okay, so this is somebody who has incredible abilities, but is actually not enlightened in the sense of having completed his own complete spiritual process. So what we learned is that he has his own a lot of issues with anger and distress and discomfort that unfortunately are still lodged within himself, and they flare up to the surface, and he is trying to suppress them, push them back down. But that is, that's there, and it's been an impediment in his own spiritual journey. His guru passed away at some point, probably before he was able to complete his own process, and he still has his own unresolved issues that are giving him a huge headache, right? So we have to empathize here and be sympathetic with that person, understand where they're coming from. He has his own issues, both within his internal system, his chakras, and also his life, his personal life, that are very difficult for him. Everybody gets into these positions and they act a certain way because of their circumstances. It's nobody's fault in any particular sense, but we also need to be able to understand things so we can protect ourselves. And it doesn't mean situations need to continue longer once we have that understanding. And that's why I'm making this video. We learned another interesting thing in this investigation. And that has to do around how his heart is, because for somebody who's spiritual and has all these spiritual experiences, you really don't feel a lot of love in the heart, or any love in the heart coming out from him. And I think his family members would attest to that. They haven't felt, his love. They even felt abandoned to him when they were kids. And that's because there's just not a lot of love coming out from him. And we learned something, very interesting. This actually wasn't from a channeler that I had hired or engaged with directly. This was from somebody else. This was from another devotee that I did speak with in person. And they told me that it's based on a very expensive $450 an hour psychic that they had hired in a different country to just for themselves. And they said that this guru, and I guess previously, had come from the same planet they were on, a type of tall gray alien with with energy coming from their hands that they use for healing. Now this is interesting because it can potentially explain a little bit about what's going in the heart. Why we don't feel that love, and why why he's inclined to take advantage of people. And that's because the gray aliens, and I haven't met any gray aliens, I just know the little I know from some things I've seen online, and talking to one other channeler to try to make sense of this thing. But The gray aliens, from what I know, often they're kind of a fourth dimensional alien, so they're not in like super high dimensions, and they actually don't have any qualms with taking humans, doing experiments on them. That's not an issue for them. They don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. They may just be experimenting with science, and um, they take some humans into their ship, do some experiments. They don't see anything wrong with that. And they don't have this particular love in the heart. So it's possible, right? And this is just a conjecture. You can take it for what they want. I really don't know on this point. I do not. I'm just going from what I've heard, but it does tie into and makes a little bit of sense why the heart might not be so open, why he feels like he can take advantage of people, but why he also has extraordinary abilities. So it could be that he was kind of inclined or able to have some of these abilities, even the psychic abilities that he has, because of that kind of gray alien background. But the compassion, the heart isn't really there, similar to that type of species. And also, he feels it's okay to take advantage of humans because he doesn't really have that compassion. So you can definitely take that with a grain of salt. I'm not super, holding into that as a belief myself. I think we're a lot of us are star beings, including myself. We came originally from different places. Some of us, like myself, have been here kind of all along, and some people came in at different points. But there's nothing wrong with taking that larger perspective. And again, that's more hazy, right? Unless you're in those states where you can, go out astral travel and check out different spaceships. It's a little bit harder to put your finger on something like that. But I did want to provide that information there in the spirit of fairness, of providing information and sharing what I know. So take that for what you will. If it resonates, if it feels true to you, then you can take that. If not, you can leave it. I'm just saying uh, one thing that I heard to provide a bit more of a complete picture here. So that is a little bit about what I know, about this situation. For me, for me personally, I give these sessions. I can tell you how they work, everything I know about, how they work. Um, the key thing to understand is that, when I give these sessions, me and my conscious body, I have some abilities. In my case, it's clair sentience, you could call it. And other people, like people who do remote Reiki, have this too, where they're able to feel what's going on inside somebody else's body and their body. So that allows me to feel and kind of keep a finger on some of what's happening during the other person in those sessions, even to send energy along with that process. Um, but I'm not powering the entire process or even a fraction of it, or I'm not creating that experience. I'm not the one surfacing the sanskaras that are going to be worked through. I'm not the one shining lights into them. I'm not the one creating all those visions. I'm not doing any of that. In my case, my higher self, and I'm grateful to my higher self. It's able to do that. It's able to send energy through me. That's going to make that happen. And I'm trying over time, maybe through more sadhana, I'll be able to more connect with my higher self, and maybe I'll be able to understand more, and maybe I'll be able to develop, more abilities. Maybe I'll merge with that higher self at some point. I hope I will. But at this point, my experience in the body, from what I consciously perceive, is very limited, and it's these spiritual forces and beings that are doing all of the work, all of the heavy lifting. And I'm certainly not going to take credit for everything that they're doing. It's far beyond my capabilities. Um, I could see that potentially I would be able to. I could say, oh, I felt this, I felt the work going on, and in here, and move from there to there. Like, do you feel that now? They feel that now, and then yeah, people would say, "Oh, that's magical. Maybe he's God, or maybe I have to keep coming back because he knows all this stuff." I always explain that that's not how it works. That I'm not driving the complexity of that process by any means, and I've learned that beyond my higher self, as much as it can do, it also welcomes other beings into this process. So it's not it's not even the only one doing this and driving the results in the sessions. It's giving its own energy, pushing energy through me, but then it's allowing other beings that may be guides, personal guides of that individual, personal angels that are connected with that individual, and it's letting them use the energy to help even more during their sessions. And now I've been having a lot of experience in sessions where different ascended masters will come in and use that use that energy, and also be helping in the sessions in their own way and be doing their own process in the sessions that feels entirely different than the process that my higher self does. And what happens with the Shakti pot that this guru does, I believe, works in a similar way, where you have a Shakti pot being, multidimensional being, that knows how to give that Shakti pot process with that feel and flavor, and that being is driving most of the process, and that explains why this guru can kind of sit back and drink coffee and eat breakfast while there are 20 people receiving Shakti pot. The reason why he's able to do that, in my humble opinion, based on my experience of also giving group sessions now, is that he's not consciously driving the minutia of everybody's experience. When I have a session with multiple people, and even live stream, sometimes I may not even know everyone who's there. After the session, there are people who still have all these experiences, and they feel all these things going on. Whereas in my body, I can either feel the average of that experience. So I can feel on average, there's work going on in the heart, average for everyone, or I could tune into one person at a time, and I could feel what's happening inside that one person. But my consciousness is not so expanded to such an extraordinary point that I can know what's happening in everybody at the same time, let alone control everything that's happening with everybody at the same time. So this process, and I will speak for myself, this process of giving a Shaktipat session, or giving a meditation session or an energy healing session, what I'm just calling energy channeling, right? We're channeling, we're leveraging these other beings. What happens is not you consciously controlling everything, but what happens is that you're creating a space, and maybe, at least in my case, supplying some of the energy for much more intelligent and far-reaching spiritual beings to come in and conduct this extraordinary process. I think it's important that we, recognize the limits of the individual in that process. Know that you don't have to be God in order to do that, and that you don't need to take advantage of of people. And there's a fine line between enabling a spiritual process that people can benefit from, having those extraordinary abilities, and putting them to good use for the benefit of all, versus kind of crossing that line and extracting a lot more value from particular people who you're able to draw in. So it's time we take a very hard look at what is going on. It's important that we protect people who may be vulnerable, and it's important that we protect them by providing information so they can make their own decisions. So I thank you for listening. I'm available if people want more explanations, or if they want to get into this more. And there's probably more that I can go into to make this a more complete picture. I spent months researching this, and I spent many hours talking with psychics, delving in and investigating this. And I'm sure I haven't covered all that information in this video. I'm sure there's more to say, more we can get into. And I hope I've given a little bit of a gist of, you know, what I have to say about this in these points, and I hope that people can, you know, make their own decisions. I'm not trying to go on a crusade here. I think everybody has their own spiritual journey. I felt personally that that journey is more effective when truth is involved and you know what's going on, and when you're able to make your own decisions based on reality, then the spiritual journey improves and goes faster. Because if you're tied into believe that one person is God, and you can't experiment around and find other paths, then that can actually slow down your spiritual progress. So you might think that you're spending all this money and, you know, having all these sessions and making more progress, but you have to compare that to if you spent a little bit of that money on, let's say, a number of spiritual practitioners, maybe practitioners that didn't claim they're God. But what I've learned is that, you know, everybody has their own abilities. So if you spent a little bit of that money on people that had different abilities, you might be able to kind of come at things in your spiritual system from a different angle, maybe even open more up. The other problem, and this may have been the biggest fundamental flaw working with this guru, is that he was so invested in the Shaktipat process, probably because he was giving it and that's how he was getting paid, that we did not focus on building attention and concentration, which I've learned is actually something that's very important in the spiritual journey. If you can't pay attention and focus and you can't quiet the mind, then you don't get too far and you don't open up other individual abilities, which is maybe what this individual wanted, right? I'm just conjecturing here, but it kind of hangs together. If you just have people keep paying for these Shaktipat sessions, which are good and are effective in some ways, but you don't at the same time develop concentration and focus, which I didn't. In all the years I was with this guru, I didn't develop concentration because we're just kind of, you know, going with the flow, and we're not really developing that focus. He had a very movement-based style. If you're moving around, then you don't get a chance to focus as much. Without that focus and concentration, you don't get as far on the spiritual path. So by understanding more, being more open-minded, potentially not getting locked into a single guru, but being able to explore others, explore different styles of meditation, you might actually progress more spiritually. Believe it or not, you might progress more spiritually if you're able to deploy your resources more effectively and you're able to meditate. And it turns out to do a concentration-based meditation, you might not even have to pay anything. I've since been to a program called Vipassana, originally started by someone named Goenka. That's donation based. You can go to a 10-day course. You can build up to a 20-day course, and they ask for an optional donation afterwards. So you could actually not pay anything and still be meditating over there. And they're still, you know, light beings, you know, beings from the other side that help people in that kind of meditation. So you might find that you're having even a similar experience to what you might have been paying $300 for every day. And you might even be able to develop more concentration on your own, meditating in a meditation center on a donation basis. You might not even be paying anything for that. So, you know, you need to be able to see what's effective for you, what's effective spiritually for you. And you're not going to get the chance to do that if you're brainwashed into thinking that I have to give all my money to this guru and I have to continually take sessions for 5 hours a day with one particular guru, that's not going to give you the chance to explore other options and find things that may even be more effective. I don't think, yeah, I don't think there's a reason to be locked into that extent, and that's why this type of, organization is so dangerous and potentially not beneficial. But again, I'm not, it's not my intention to condemn. I've tried to distance myself as much as I could from feelings of anger. So I'm just trying to give a perspective, and I'm really just trying to lay down whatever facts, whatever information I've been able to ascertain, and hopefully that will help you or your loved ones in whatever organization you may be in. Because again, I think there's a lot of similarities between what's happened here in this very small organization and what might have happened in larger ones. And I hope it can help anybody who who may be exposed to that. I'm happy to talk more. I'm happy to make other videos. We can have this be a larger conversation. Thank you.